Welcome everybody to Andrew's Ashram. I just wanted to talk a bit today about something that affects virtually everybody, and it's just what drama is and how it affects our lives, and why you should try and avoid it and how. Just my thoughts on it, and obviously, just a quick disclaimer to sort of suggest that I never get involved in it would be ridiculous, but I always am mindful of what situations I'm getting into, so I think I've become quite good at avoiding it, really. And sort of one of the examples, really, that I sort of want to give is sort of my presence on YouTube over the last year. I've had a channel where it's quite a controversial topic that I talk about, and there's been lots and lots of one of the things I never expected about YouTube was kind of the amount of trolls and negative comments and angry people. I mean, it's quite obviously a bit naive coming to it. I think it's not. I didn't expect it because I never really thought about it, and the amount of sort of people that seem to, for whatever reason, spend their time scrolling through videos and just putting negative comments on and trying to get people to rise. I mean, obviously, saying that you disagree with a video, or giving constructive criticism, or even criticism and saying, I think you've gone too far or whatever, that's fine, but it's the downright, that's not drama. But drama is when someone would get personally offended by a comment or something that's not generally about them, and then they start throwing insults and taking it really personally, and sometimes there's even threats, which I've had in the past. Every now and again I've bitten. But really, when you get down to it, especially, I mean, I'm just talking about the YouTube forum at the minute, the best way to deal with it is to just avoid it completely. It's someone on a computer, unless they've got something interesting, positive to say. Well, it doesn't have to be positive, but constructive. Then you don't have to reply, and you avoid the drama by not getting involved. It's very, very simple. But it's difficult to do because what will happen is if you get a comment and someone says you're shit, or your videos are shit, or you're wasting your time, whatever, then sometimes your ego will respond and see that as an attack, and then your ego will respond back, and that is what drama is. And every now and again, when someone said something that's really sort of got to me, I have, on a few rare occasions, bitten, and it had to sort of respond back. Another sort of medium that I used to use was, I'm a fan of a sports team in England, a rugby team, and we have like a Facebook page. It's not a huge team. We have like probably a fan base of around about 6,000. And we have a Facebook page which called like the banter page, we call it, where all the fans will talk about games and the players. And basically I don't use it anymore because I came to realise that people have their opinions and you have yours. In 99% of cases, people just want to express their opinions because they want to see themselves being heard, when really, I've discovered why. You're not going to change anybody else's mind. And it got to the point where you'd make an opinion about something and someone would disagree with you. And in the most cases, people wouldn't just disagree, they'd tell you were wrong. Now, obviously, what I do is, if someone says something that I don't agree with, I say, I do not agree with you. Which isn't drama, that's just stating an opinion. An opinion is just an opinion. And it's just a state of mind, it's just a mental position, it has no basis in reality. We don't really have. We're not conscious enough as human beings to understand the bigger picture and to understand everything. So a perspective is just a perspective, especially when you're talking about sports. And you might say, "Oh, that player's shit." What does that mean exactly? He's a professional player. He might be not as skillful in certain areas, but really that phrase, "Oh, Smith is shit." What does that actually mean? It doesn't actually mean anything. So when people come out with that, it's really is silly and dramatic. So it got to the point where, only a few weeks ago, I went against my own advice, and what was the comment? No, one of the players that I know personally, and this was my fault, so I kind of learned from it. One of the players that I know personally that I think is a great guy, he got dropped from a squad for a really important game. And I believe he's really talented, and I believed it was the wrong decision. And my perspective was that he's been treated unfairly by the club. That may be true, it may not be. So I put a post on there. I think it's the first time in around about 8 months that I've written anything on the page. And I said, I think he should look for another club. And then someone responded and said, why? And I said, well, I think he's being treated unfairly. And then it went on, and this guy who I was talking to said, that's ridiculous, he's not going to throw the toys out of the pram. And I tried to put my point forward as best as I could, and I said, well, maybe I'm missing something, and maybe the coaching staff are seeing something that I don't, because they're the professionals. I said, but in my opinion, blah, 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 blah. And he said, no, you're wrong, blah, blah, blah. He kept going on, and then he started telling me, in the comments section, he said, "You said his career is is standing still because he's at Leigh and he should move." And I said, "Well, that's not what I said. I never used any of those words." And then he responded and said, "Yes, you did." And at that point, I had to walk away because that could have gone on for ages. And it's like, how many people now in the modern world spend the time arguing with people on a internet forum, whether it be YouTube, Facebook, I don't know much about Instagram and Snapchat and Snap Picture or whatever it's called, but I'm just looking at it on the forums that I use. Facebook is something that I use but try to go on as briefly as possible. But if you just look at it from that perspective, Facebook and YouTube, look at the comment sections. There's like videos about it where people have literally threatened each other, and I'm pretty sure physical fights have ensued, and maybe even like serious injuries. And we know that deaths have occurred in extreme situations with regard to, online dating. Well, not online dating, but if anybody's seen the documentary Tall Hot Blonde, it's absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend that enough. But if you just look at it from that perspective, YouTube, people typing and disagreeing with someone and taking it so personally, and it goes into so much depth, and there's so much emotion there. And I've come to realise, ultimately, what does it matter what someone's opinion is and what yours is, unless somebody's personally threatening you in a physical way and is going to affect your life negatively. There's no point reacting whatsoever. Even if someone personally insults you, although it's very hard to do, you just need to rise above it. And that's, in essence, what you have to do with drama. And it affects all our lives. I mean, I've just spoke about the online sort of forum, and obviously that's becoming more and more prevalent in the modern world, isn't it? But if you just look at it from a from a real life perspective, it affects so many people, and it's part of modern culture and how we're sort of brought into the world and what you're exposed to when you're younger. I mean, just an example, in the other YouTube channel that I have, there was like a person that came into the community. I don't want to. This isn't to insult anybody. This is to just give an example. And they reacted to a couple of things I said when I was doing a live stream once, and then it got, they seemed to get personally offended, and then they started. I became aware that they started. And the thing is, at the time, it was all me and my friend were doing like a bit of a comedy thing, and it wasn't very serious. But this person took it really seriously, and it was only a couple of throwaway comments about a politician. And then all of a sudden, I became aware that that person was like personally insulting me on social media because they knew my name, and it was like trying to round up people against me. And it would have been very easy at that point to just bite. And if I'd have done that, what good would that have achieved? Now, you could say I'm not standing up for myself, but ultimately the way I viewed it was, if anybody wants to believe what some person said about me, and it's just on the online forum, it has nothing to do really with my life, then if they want to believe something that someone said, they're not really worth my time. And that's not to be horrible. What I mean is, what would it matter what they think? It's of no importance. If someone is that sort of small-minded, where they see somebody else's comments about something and they, oh yeah, such a body's horrible, I'm like, well, fine, believe what you want. So I didn't bite, and I heard that they were saying this and they were saying that, and then people that I knew in this community, if you will, started to see what had been written, and well, I must admit, there was a couple of times where I thought, well, should I say something here? Because it is affecting my online reputation in a way. But I thought, no. Because at the end of the day, I kind of got an impression of what that person was like. They were kind of just a very dramatic person that didn't know how to exist in any other forum. So I just left it, didn't say a thing, let them go on and on, because I knew eventually they'd just find somebody else to fall out with, because that's how these people operate. And strangely enough, it was true, they did. It stopped, and then that person ended up coming back to me and trying to sort of came back to me with another story about someone else. And I said, I don't want to get involved. Please, leave me out of it. And I sent them a message and said, I believe you've been saying this, that, and that about me. So therefore, I don't particularly trust you. However, I wish you nothing but, peace. I hope you, and that was fine. And then they said, yeah, I appreciate that, but I just want you to know what such and such a body's been saying about you. And I just thought, okay. So if I'd have got involved in that, the amount of drama that would have created would have been enormous. There would have been all kinds of people getting dragged in, no doubt. There would have been supporters of that person. People would have started saying that I was wrong in saying what I was saying. So I've avoided all that drama just by not getting involved and not biting. It's just about keeping you cool. And in sort of let's talk about the everyday sort of, the real life, your day-to-day interactions with people, not online. How does drama affect people's lives then? Well, drama just isn't between two people always. Drama, let's just say you live on your own. And at the moment, I do. And it's great. Some people like it, some people don't. But, excuse me. Yeah, so can you create drama when you're on your own? You would think that that's impossible, but of course it isn't. You create drama when you feel sorry for yourself. Feeling sorry for yourself, you're building a story on top of the situation. So let's say I looked at my situation negatively. My living situation at the moment. I live in a nice place. I've got, a lot of amenities and everything that I need, really. But let's say I built a negative story around that and said, oh, I'm living on my own, I've got no one to talk to, I get up and there's no one there and it's rubbish and I'm going to be like this forever, and why is everybody else better off than me? That's drama, isn't it? That is building a story around the present moment. You're adding unnecessary baggage to the situation, when if you just concentrated on the here and now, it's like, at this moment in time, me, what I'm doing right now is talking and making a video. And it's as simple as that. But even more basic that, the present moment I am talking, but there's no one else around me. But if I built a story around that, that would be drama. Obviously, within relationships, that the most common, let's be serious for a moment. The most common drama is relationships between a man and a woman, or a man and a man. In other words, intimate relationships. That is the very essence of drama, isn't it? Well, not the essence, but that is where most drama comes from. And let's take an example of like soap operas. What's the main sort of things that go on in soap operas that get people's attention? It's like affairs, isn't it? In love relationships, love triangles and things like that. Films and movies, so much popular culture is based around that. And of course, nothing stirs the emotions quite like that, does it? So, you know, why is that? Well, of course, there's a lot of emotion involved, isn't there? And a lot of self-investment in intimate relationships. You're putting so much on the line, you're putting so much into it. And of course, when something goes wrong, all that emotion is brought to the surface and you start to develop a story around it, and then it gets out of hand, doesn't it? We've all been there. I'm hoping it never happens to me again, but I'm no doubt that it will do at some point. I don't mean intimate relationships, I mean the drama that goes with it. Some more than others. Of course, the sort of even the most healthy relationships will occasionally. I mean, at the end of the day, we're human beings, aren't we? We have like a break, not necessarily a breaking point, but we have a point where we sort of can't keep our cool anymore. Only truly enlightened masters, of which there are very few on this planet, would never have a point where they just don't react anymore. You would have to have no ego whatsoever. Your ego would have to have been destroyed. And like I said, on Earth, there's a few spiritual teachers out there, I believe, that are like that, but very few. And you have to seek those out for yourself. And when you do, you'll know that they are true masters, teachers, authors, spiritual teachers, things like that. But talking about ourselves, and there might be some listening, I don't know. And of course, I'm certainly not, but I like to think I've got a pretty good take on things. But, so it's not surprising, is it, that, relationships stir that. Let's talk about, I don't know, my last kind of... no, I'm not going to do that. But if we just take an example of... like a man and a woman, and the one has had an affair with the other one. Sorry, one has had an affair and the other one finds out. Obviously, there's going to be drama, isn't there? There's going to be the person finds out, then there's a fight and all that. The sort of paradox is that if you were an enlightened master, you wouldn't be in a relationship where that would happen, in my view. However, most love relationships, most, not all, it really is just like an addiction and a clinging. There isn't really, much. Most of the relationships that I observe are mostly built upon sometimes fear and wanting and a need. And, of course, we're at that stage as humans now where we're sort of imperfect. So, when we try and live our lives, there's obviously going to be failings, isn't there, in ourselves as people. So that gets brought into intimate relationships. So obviously that's like a big thing, isn't it? The love relationships, and anybody that has been through a massive breakup, how often are you able to stay friends with that person and on an amicable terms, depending on how it's happened? I've found that usually initially when the breakup happens, you're suffering pain, aren't you? You're suffering that, depending on how it's happened. There's the pain, you're dealing with the loss, and you're dealing with grief and, you know, maybe fear of being alone. So you've got all these emotions going on. And how do you deal with it? In most cases, you're going to develop a story and you're going to say, that person's a bitch or that person's a bastard. And then suddenly you start telling your friends stories about things that they've done. How often have you been in a situation where you've been in a relationship and you're telling, I mean, I've been there, and you're telling a friend of yours, do you know what she did once? Blah, 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 blah. She did, you know, and I rung her up and said, and the problem with all that is you're telling somebody a story from your perspective. And generally what happens is, it's like Chinese whispers. The more that story gets told and the longer the time has elapsed, you start to, that actual story starts to become more and more distorted, in that you end up telling something that didn't really happen. You think that it did because you're recollecting it from your memory, but the person that you're talking to and your friend is only going to see it from your perspective, and 9 times out of 10 they're going to tell you what you want to hear. So what good is that actually achieving? You're getting things off your chest, but ultimately you're getting told false realities in most occasions. Yeah, you're totally right, and she's totally wrong, and she's a bitch, blah, 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 blah. And that is the problem that ensues, isn't it? And that will keep the illusion in your mind going and going, because you'll think, yes, I'm in the right. Well, you don't even need to say who's in the right and who's in the wrong. All you need to do, if you act with integrity, you need to let that person do what they've done, as hard as that is. Because if you get caught up on what they've done and how terrible they are, it will ultimately eat at you. You have to forgive that person, and you have to wish them well. And although I no doubt there might be some people listening to this and say, that's ridiculous because they did that. And of course, there's always situations and people that do very unpleasant things. But of course, that's the level of consciousness that they're at. So what are you going to do? Are you going to stay angry and bitter at them forever and let them eat you away? It's your choice, but ultimately that will not do you any good. Everybody's on their own path, and ultimately, when you get down to it, you are on your own in this world. There's no doubt about it. You can convince yourself that, you know, you're walking it with someone else, and to some degree, it's nice to have that person there. But ultimately, everything that you do in your own consciousness is up to you. You've got to walk it alone. And it can be a frightening place if you view it from a certain way. We are sort of based in a lot of fear these days. There's so much good. The world's very complicated, isn't it? With regard to drama of like other situations, obviously family is you know, that's a breeding ground for it, isn't it? And that's probably like family and intimate relationships, like your close family members that you have been with for years. I can't remember who it was. It was a spiritual teacher, that I think it was Ramdas, that said, if you think you are so enlightened, try spending the week with your parents. And it was like, that's so true, isn't it? If you like everybody, because you've got so much history and emotions attached to family members, it's very, very difficult. It's like you sit down with someone at the breakfast table that you've been doing that with for 10 years, and there's so much nonsense caught up in that, and memories and judgments, that you're not really meeting that person anymore. There's no real true interaction anymore. And also another sort of forum where drama breeds is obviously the working environment, isn't it? Depending on what you do. But obviously I'm talking about if you work in an environment where there's lots of like teams of these people and teams of that. And you will have judgments about another team of people, and they're always, there's always like factions, isn't there? That group of people are better than that group, and that team works better than that team, and then you tell stories about someone else, and it's all dramatic, isn't it? It's all, you're telling stories that you're not really sure are true, but you're telling them to someone else just to get a reaction off them, and then it validates your point of view. That is what you call drama, isn't it? And it's like, how do you avoid it? You don't make judgments. Ultimately, when you get down to it, you know nothing about a person. You know one very small perspective, even about a situation that's arisen. It's like, I'm going back to the online forum, aren't I, here? But newspapers that post, like in Manchester, there's a Manchester Evening News, which is, I don't like, but every now and again it pops up on my Facebook feed about a story, and people will write comments in the section below the news story, and the arguments that go on there, because obviously if it's a news story, there's a lot of depending on what it is, there's a lot of emotion attached to it if it's like a tragedy, and then people get involved in all kinds of discussions. Why? There's no real point in doing that. You have your perspective, let another person have theirs, and it's the same, face to face. It's like there was, I was in a bar. This was a couple of years ago, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years ago. I can't remember, but there was someone I know, not necessarily a friend, but an acquaintance, and it was when there was a lot of going on with ISIS, the Islamic State. I think there'd been a couple of attacks, and I didn't know a lot about the political situation over there. I don't know anything about what's gone on, and this is an extreme situation. You're talking about the murdering of people, so obviously that's going to create a huge amount of, if you want to call it drama, it is. Probably gonna have people back saying, how can it not be? But it is drama. Everything is drama unless it's dealt with from a true reality. And he said to me, Andy, what do you think of ISIS? I said, I don't really think anything about it. I don't know enough to form any kind of judgment. And he said, well, you must think something. I said, well, no, I don't. And I was being truthful. I didn't want to get involved in a political discussion about something I know nothing about. So I was just trying to be honest and said I don't have any judgments about it. I don't know anything about what they're doing. And of course, it goes without saying that murdering people is obviously not it's not right, is it? Of course, that goes without saying. Shouldn't have even needed to say that. But I didn't have any judgments about what was going on, and he just wouldn't take that. So he said, come on, you must have something. I said, no, mate, I don't. Honestly, I don't know anything about it. I don't watch the news, so there's no point me saying anything. He says, no, go on, what do you think about it? I said, I don't think anything about it. And he said, you're a prick, and walked off. And I just stood there and I was like, okay. Right, now, if you think about that is and he's not a bad guy. I speak to him now occasionally and I get on with him. It's not a problem. But what he wanted to do, he wanted to have this dramatic discussion and say, if you think about it, the bastards over there are fucking horrible. I think they should all be gassed. It's something along them lines. And I'm not interested in that kind of conversation. So that he wanted me to validate his point of view, and then we could both sing from the same hymn sheet and talk about something that we know very little, if nothing, about. Of course, it is. If something is evil, then that is murdering innocent people, of course. But of course, the conversation wouldn't have gone down that road. So I didn't want to get involved. And that's kind of what you deal with on a daily basis. You have to try and remain impersonal and not lose your cool. And another quick example, gonna make me sound like an alcoholic, this, but I can assure you I'm only borderline. But if this was only, I think this was like a month ago. A friend of mine owns a bar, and he was having a bit of trouble with this guy. I'd only literally just walked in there, and my friend was stood at the side of me, and then I sort of stood in between him and this other chap who I'd never met before. He's like in his mid-40s. I've never seen him before, and just quite an angry. You could tell his like eyebrows were dead low towards his eyes, and he just looked angry. You just tell he was looking for an argument or even a fight. So I stood, and my mate can be quite volatile, so I stood in between them to try and, just because I could tell tensions were running high. And then this chat, he just started going on about politics in the local area and the government, and started saying, it's wrong, innit? Blah, 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 blah. And it was like, I think it was like 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. And he was trying to talk to me, and I'm not interested in was having this conversation. When I go out in them environments, it's for fun. I don't like to get involved in political, religious discussions, even about sports teams. I do it to have fun and have a laugh. In my opinion, that's what those kind of environments should be for. Not to sit in and drink beer and watch TV and talk about something you know nothing about. To try and have some fun. And he said, yeah, it's bullshit. And he was going on and telling me about how the government and how there's conspiracy theories and the Illuminati. And it got to the point where I did, react a little bit. And I said, mate, I'm not being funny, but I'm not interested in any of this. I just come here for a drink. And he went, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm not, I don't know who you are. You're telling me about all these things, and I've come to speak to my friend. If you want to have some fun and a laugh with me, I'm up for it, but I'm not interested in any of that. And he went, so you're not interested? I said, I'm not saying I'm not. I said, this isn't the type of environment for it. I said, you should be having fun. If you want to do something about them political situations, you become a politician or do something about it. Otherwise, don't talk about it in this, don't go on and ramble on and on and on. And he kind of didn't, and this was kind of a volatile situation here. Because it was a gamble me saying that, because he could have got violent, and I knew that he was kind of the violent type. But he kind of didn't say anything. He said, I think he kind of was in a position where he didn't know what to do then. And he said, well, I am doing something about it. I didn't believe him. But I thought, but obviously I had no evidence to suggest that he wasn't doing something about it. He was quite drunk, by the way. So I said, well, congratulations, mate. And I was being serious. I said, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. I hope it goes well, and I hope you make a difference. He went, yeah. And then he started going on about it again, because it was like an avenue for him to continue talking, and I had to stop him in his tracks. I don't believe he was doing anything. I think it's just because he was put in a position where he had no way out of that. Other than get violent, he had no way out of that situation, because what I was saying was right, and he knew it. And he ended up storming off. He had an argument with someone else in the place. But that's drama, isn't it? And in those type of environments, people are drinking alcohol specifically. It's rife. I mean, bloody hell, I could give examples forever, as I'm sure everybody could. So yeah, this has gone on for a little bit. Time's flying when I'm talking about these things. So, yeah, so I just wanted to try and, because it's something that I've become mindful of, really, in my life. I always try and avoid it, because what you're doing, if you get involved in drama, you're wasting your time in an illusion. And how can that be fruitful in any way? If you spot drama as drama, it no longer is drama, because you're aware of what it is. It's when you get lost in it that it's the drama, and that's when it's virtually, you can't spot it because you're involved in it. So you always have to take a step back from the situation. Drama can be fun. There's nothing wrong with drama. I love to observe it. I don't like to get involved in it, but I like to observe it. It's humorous. It's entertaining, and that's why we like movies. And life is, your own personal movie, but it's like the saying is to be, you are in this world, but you're not of it. It's another way of saying, don't get involved in the drama, but observe it. And if you do, you'll always be successful. You will always come out on top. Because you'll keep you cool and you'll be able to analyse the situation from a true perspective. Because you won't get sucked in. You won't let the emotion get the better of you. It's like when someone's shouting and screaming at you and saying the most horrible things. If you shout and scream back and let the emotion get the better of you, you've lost perspective at that point. Unless you're aware of what you're doing and you're doing it for a specific result. Sometimes if some angry guy's shouting and screaming at you, the only way to gain an advantage in that situation is to shout and scream back. If that's the reason why you're doing it. You know, for instance, you know, like if a bear approaches you in the woods, not that I'm in a situation where that would happen because there's no bears around here, but you know, you create yourself big and go and raw, don't you? Like raw, you know, and the bear will hopefully either run away or eat you alive. Yeah. So anyway, I think I'm gonna leave it there, everybody. This is only the second video that I've made on this channel. This necessarily not might be considered as a spiritual topic. I suppose it is from a perspective. It's like I said in the first video, it depends what you mean by spirituality. It's just a way of living in the truth, in my opinion, living from a deeper place. But these are the kind of topics that I like to talk about. So just let me know if you've enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much. Bye.